Good morning and welcome to the Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfick Farzan. It's the 11th of July 2025. Now, the past 24 hours have been very interesting, where many developing stories have taken place here at home and across the world. Now, let's start off with something that shook the Panadura area this morning. A gunman had opened fire through a window, injuring one person. Now, what's this story? A 32-year-old man of Malumulla was injured in a shooting incident that occurred early this morning while he was asleep at home, police have confirmed. According to police spokesman, Assistant Superintendent of Police F.U. Wootler, the shooting took place when an unidentified individual opened fire through a window of the victim's residence. The assailant is believed to have used a pistol in the attack. Preliminary investigation suggests that the incident may be linked to an ongoing dispute between two organized criminal groups. The injured man is currently receiving treatment at the Panadura hospital. Police have launched a full investigation into the incident and are working to identify and apprehend those responsible. The 2025 O-level exam results are out. The results of the 2025 General Certificate of Education or GCE Ordinary Level Examination were officially released at midnight yesterday. According to the Department of Examinations, students and school principals can now access the results via the official websites www.doenets.lk and www.results.exams.gov.lk. The department confirmed that principals can download result documents using the usernames and passwords previously issued to them. Applications for result re-scrutiny will be accepted from July 14 to 28, providing students an opportunity to request a review of their marks. This year's O-level examination, originally scheduled for last year, was held in March 2025. A total of 474,147 candidates sat for the exam, including 398,182 school candidates. Now, this is according to the official statistics released by the Department of Examinations. Moving on, the following is a story from the President's comments at the historic Ruhunu Khataragam Mahadevalaya Asila Pirahara. Now, Sri Lanka President Anura Kumara Dissanayake has emphasized that Sri Lanka's path to development must be built upon the foundation of its rich cultural and historical heritage. He made these remarks while attending the grand finale of the annual Asara Pirahara of the historic Ruhunu Maha Khataragama Devalaya. Addressing the gathering, the President noted that while modern societies often focus heavily on material wealth and physical advancement, such pursuits should not come at the cost of eroding essential social values and human compassion. He said many strive to accumulate material assets, but in doing so, they risk losing the humanism and social values that define us, unquote. Again, he said, quote, "We must not disconnect from our historical roots. Any nation that has achieved true progress has done so by preserving and building upon its cultural legacy," unquote. The President highlighted the significance of Sri Lanka's Buddhist heritage, particularly the arrival of Arahat Mehindu and the transformative impact of the Dhamma on the island's social and cultural fabric. He said, quote, "Our society was shaped by the principles of compassion, loving kindness and the Four Noble Truths. These values must guide our development journey," unquote. President Dissanayake called for a national dialogue on development that respects and integrates Sri Lanka's historical identity. Now, the historic annual Asila Pirahara of the Ruhunu Maha Khataragama Devalaya is set to conclude with the traditional Diya Kapira, or the water cutting ceremony at the Jivamali ferry point on the banks of the Manik River. The final night of the Pirahara was held yesterday with great grandeur, drawing thousands of devotees and tourists from across Sri Lanka and abroad. The ceremonial casket, or the Sadatuka Karandua, was placed under the patronage of President Anura Kumara Dissanayake. The sacred casket was carried by Singharaja, the majestic elephant from the Sri Dalada Maligawa in Kandy, while the ornamental regalia were borne by Vasana, the ceremonial elephant of Khataragama. The water cutting ritual, a deeply symbolic act marking the end of the Pirahara, is a revered tradition believed to purify and bless the community. This year's festival received extensive media coverage, with Sirasa TV and Sirasa FM serving as official media partners. Now moving on, Sri Lanka's Deputy Minister of Finance Dr. Anil Jayanta has confirmed that discussions are actively underway to establish a bilateral trade agreement between Sri Lanka and the United States. He expressed optimism that significant progress could be achieved before August 1st. He further stated that Sri Lanka anticipates a reduction in the current 30% tariff rate imposed by the United States and voiced confidence that further concessions may be possible through ongoing negotiations. The United States on Wednesday announced a reduction in tariffs applicable to Sri Lankan exports, lowering the rate from 44% to 30% effective August 1st. This decision was formally communicated to President Anura Kumara Dissanayake via a letter from US President Donald Trump. The tariff adjustment follows a declaration made by President Trump on April 2nd at the White House Rose Garden, where he outlined reciprocal tariff measures aimed at addressing trade imbalances with partner countries. Sri Lanka was among the nations affected by this policy shift. Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Dr. Harshana Surya Pirma, speaking at a press briefing yesterday, confirmed that the reduction in tariff rates was a direct outcome of the ongoing dialogue between Sri Lanka and the United States. The government views these developments as a positive step towards strengthening economic ties and enhancing trade opportunities between the two nations. Now, yesterday, a special press briefing was held at the Department of Government Information to comment on President Trump's decision to lower the tariffs from 44% to 30%. Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, has stated that the recent reduction in tariffs on Sri Lankan exports from 44% to 30% is a recognition of the ongoing good faith negotiations between the two countries. Speaking during a media briefing, Dr. Veerasinghe emphasized that the decision by US President Donald Trump to lower the tariff rate was not necessarily based on a finalized agreement, but rather on acknowledgement that both nations are engaged in constructive dialogue aimed at mutual benefit.
So in terms of for President Trump to put down that figure from 44% to 30% in a letter, surely there has to be some kind of, even not, if not concrete agreement. As you said, it's still negotiation. But what have we put forward as our offer to enable or to convince the US to bring down the 44% to 30%? In terms of...
Yes, in my view, it's not necessarily, I don't think President Trump would have looked at what exactly on the table. It is the confirmation, recognition of we have engaged in good faith negotiation and with an intention to bring benefits to both countries. So that is the bottom line of the negotiations. Once we establish that we are engaged in good faith negotiation with a positive outcome for both countries, that has been recognized. That is, I think, the reason that they have brought down to 40%, 30%.
But is there any concrete areas that you can tell us this is what we have put forward from our side in order to...
The whole idea is to reduce the, increase more trade between two and have more market access for US and us. So what we are looking at is that what are the products that we can import more from the US, what are the products that we can export more to the US. On that basis, we have looked at in the consultation with the industry, we have looked at the various sectors and we have in the discussion of whether there's a possibility of opening up the market for those products for both sides. That is what that's going on, because we have intention to reduce the trade deficit and have a good faith negotiation and intention in the right direction. That this is a recognition of that effort. This is why, if you can see, some countries actually they have increased reciprocal tariff. So some countries they have reduced it. For us, they have reduced it highest margin for us.
Now let's move on to Malaysia, especially Kuala Lumpur, where something big is happening, where foreign ministers from multiple countries are meeting for various discussions, and among them is Sri Lanka's Foreign Minister Wijita Hewat, and he met several foreign ministers from other nations including Australia, Russia, as well as Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Now, on the sidelines of the ministerial events under the auspices of ASEAN in Kuala Lumpur, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met with Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, Wijita Hewat. Now, during the conversation, the parties discussed pressing issues pertaining to Russian-Sri Lankan relations and collaboration on international platforms.
Mr. Minister, it's nice to make your acquaintance. Sri Lanka is our old, reliable partner in South Asia, and the relations have a deep and positive history, which we would like to promote as an example for the future. And thank you very much for your message in October last year, where you expressed your interest in getting closer to BRICS. We welcome this and will certainly be ready to join consensus on this occasion. Welcome once again.
Yes, thank you very much for you giving this opportunity. I think Sri Lanka and Russia has been continuing our bilateral relationship for a long time, and so most of Sri Lankan students are studying in Russia, and most of Sri Lankan are working in Russia.
Now let's move on to something interesting. Now in 2021, something devastating took place in the Sea of Sri Lanka. Now what is this story? You might remember the Express Pearl. Minister of Environment Dr. Dhammika Pattabandige has announced plans to appoint a special committee to investigate allegations of corruption and irregularities in the legal proceedings related to the Express Pearl maritime disaster. The minister stated that the committee will be established within the coming month. Its primary objective will be to examine the legal process that followed the incident, particularly focusing on the government's agreements and the compensation claims made in its aftermath. The Express Pearl caught fire and sank off the coast of Negombo on May 20, 2021, causing severe damage to Sri Lanka's marine ecosystem. Since then, numerous complaints have been lodged regarding the handling of legal procedures and the compensation recovery efforts. In addition to these concerns, questions have also been raised about the decision to allow the vessel entry into the port of Colombo prior to the incident. The newly appointed committee will study these issues and provide recommendations for further action. Legal proceedings related to the disaster are currently underway in both Singapore and Australia as Sri Lanka seeks compensation for the environmental damages that were caused by this maritime disaster. Now, recently, the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka announced its determination on the Electricity Amendment Bill. The Ministry of Power and Energy has announced that the revised Electricity Amendment Bill incorporating recommendations from the Supreme Court will be presented to Parliament shortly. According to the Ministry, the bill will first be discussed today at the Sectoral Oversight Committee on Infrastructure and Strategic Development. Following this review, it will be submitted to the Cabinet before being tabled in Parliament for final approval. The Supreme Court recently determined that certain provisions in the original draft of the Electricity Amendment Bill were inconsistent with the Constitution of the country. As a result, the court determined that if those provisions were to be passed without amendment, they would require a two-thirds majority in Parliament and a public referendum. Now, yesterday was an exciting day for cricket fans as a Mendes and Nissanka show took centre stage in Pallekele. Here's the story. Sri Lanka began their T20 series against Bangladesh with a commanding 7-wicket victory in the first match held in Pallekele. The home side showcased a strong all-round performance, setting the tone for the series. Bangladesh, invited to bat first by Sri Lanka, struggled early in their innings, losing their top 3 wickets for just 67 runs. Tanzeen Hassan was dismissed for 16, while captain Linton Das managed only 6. The highest scorer for Bangladesh was opener Pervez Hussain, who contributed 38 runs. At the end of their 20 overs, Bangladesh posted a total of 154 for the loss of 5. Sri Lankan spinner Mahesh Theekshana claimed 2 wickets, while Dasun Shanaka bowled economically, conceding just 22 runs in his 4 overs and picking up 1 wicket. In response, Sri Lanka's opening pair Pathum Nissanka and Kusal Mendes built a solid partnership of 78 runs with the first wicket. The team scored 83 runs in the first 6 overs, marking their highest ever power play total in T20 internationals. This passed their previous record of 75 runs against India in 2018. Nissanka scored a quick-fire 42 off 16 balls, while Mendes anchored the innings with a brilliant 73, which included 5 fours and 3 sixes. Sri Lanka comfortably chased down the target in 19 overs losing only 3 wickets in the process and took a 1-0 lead in the series. And that brings a wrap to this morning's edition of the Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfick Farzan. I will meet you again on Monday morning with more stories and developing stories that will take place throughout the weekend. Now, if you want to keep yourself updated of what's happening here at home and across Sri Lanka, please do follow us on our social media handles on X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, as well as TikTok. And also subscribe to our WhatsApp alert service, where all these stories will be directly sent to your palm-held devices. Until I see you again, take care and stay safe.